When I built my first couple of soprano ukuleles, I was able to look at two or three old Martin ukes from the 20s and 30s, and I was surprised that there were really only two braces on the soundboard. Of course, the instrument isn't under a lot of tension. Ukulele strings are not terribly tight, and I guess they deemed that these two above and below the sound hole were enough to support the top. At the time, I could only guess at the thickness of the soundboard itself, so I started making my ukuleles with a soundboard thickness of somewhere between 70 and 75 thousandths. And I noticed with the first couple of instruments that after maybe a year, the top was already caving in a little bit at the bridge. So rather than vary the thickness of the top or increase the thickness of the top, I decided I would add another little brace right under the bridge. So I ever since then have done this with my soprano ukes. Of course, the bigger instruments like tenors and baritones have more braces on them anyway, but this one extra brace right under the saddle line seems to really help stabilize the top, keeps it from sinking in. And I borrowed this idea from the classical guitar building world. I've built a lot of classical guitars over the decades, and I first saw this idea on instruments built by Robert Boucher. He makes outstanding classical guitars, and of course on the classical there were fan braces, but he also had this one brace right under the bridge, and it just helps strengthen the top of the instrument. So anyway, I started doing this, and I have done it ever since on all of my soprano ukes, and it really seems to have helped stabilize the top and not adversely affected the sound anyway, which kind of makes sense because you've got a fairly beefy bridge sitting right there. I mean, it's of course relative to everything else, it's beefy, but by adding this extra little piece under the fairly massive bridge, you really wouldn't expect it to have a whole lot of adverse effect on the tone of the instrument. So anyway, I will glue this on, and then I'll shape the three braces, and that'll be all I need to do on the soundboard until I glue it to the sides. Here's the top glued on and trimmed so that it's flush to the sides. Now I'm going to taper the sides. The back of the instrument is about 2 5/16 inches deep at the tail end, and then at the heel it's about 1 7/8 inches. So I've marked off with tape just because it's kind of dark wood, so it's hard to see my pencil lines, but I'm going to roughly get down to the top edge of the tape all the way around, and then I'll do the final dimensioning and shaping with a sanding board that I'll break out in a little bit. But for now, I'm just going to take away some of the big chunks of wood that I don't need. Chisel method works really well unless you have grain run out or wildly figured wood. Sometimes then the chisel will take off more wood than you wanted it to take off. But on this rosewood, it's great. It takes a lot of wood away quite quickly. Now that I've got the sides tapered roughly to where I want them, I'll use this board with sandpaper on it to get them to the final graduations. I've got the sides down to where I want them. I don't know if it'll show up, but it's fairly flat from the tail block to about halfway between the waist and the widest part of the lower bout, and then it dips down from there to the heel. So there's really like two different planes going on here, and when I glue the back on, that'll have the effect of creating a front to back curve. And then, as I said before, the braces are curved to give it a side to side, so overall it'll have a nice dished, well, a bowl shape. And I still have to glue in the extra pieces of kerfing that are missing from the top edge. So I'll get all that done and think about fitting the back to the sides.